Lesson 3.3, adding and subtracting fractions. Our learning target is such that we should be able to add and subtract all fractions, including improper fractions and mixed numbers. Take a moment to answer this question. You don't have to write anything down, just think about it. Take a moment to actually complete this warm-up in your notebook. Hopefully for each of these you have arrived at the correct answer. This was pretty basic. We learned to add and subtract a long time ago. When we add and subtract, it's important for us to line up the numbers at the decimal point because we only want to add and subtract those numbers that are in the same place value. For example, 6 ones minus 6 ones gives us 0 ones. 5 tens minus 6 tens. Wait a second, if I only have 5 tens, I can't take away 6 tens, so we regroup. We use one of the hundreds, which allows us to add 10 tens. So now instead of having 5 tens, we have 15 tens. 15 tens minus 6 tens leaves us with 9 tens. Again, when we move to the 100s place value, we need to take our 100 and subtract 300. We don't have enough 100s to take away 300s, and rather than going into the negatives, we do some regrouping. We regroup this 1,000 as 10 hundreds, leaving us with 1,100 minus 300, or 890. This would follow through for each of these. We can continue working on the warm-ups in the same way when we do addition. We add, of course, in the same decimal place. We add the tenths. We add the ones. Here, when I add 4 ones and 9 ones, I get 13 ones. I use 3 of them, and I regroup 10 of them as 110. Same thing down here, I have to subtract in the tenths. Since I don't have any tenths to take from in the first number, I will regroup one of the ones as 10 tenths. And if I have 10 tenths minus 5 tenths, I will have 5 tenths. Again, need to do some regrouping. I don't have enough ones to take away 9 of them, so I will regroup one of the tens as 10 ones. 13 minus 9 gives us 4. 5 minus 3 gives us 2 in the tens place. Over here in the addition, we'll again start in the ones place. 6 ones and 6 ones gives us 2 ones with 110. We add in that 110, we end up with 12 100s. So that's really like 2 tens and 1 100. When we add up our 100s, we have 6. And when we add in our thousands place, we have 1. We start out with this because adding fractions isn't all that much different. When we add and subtract fractions, we must add and subtract fractions with the same denominator. Since the value of the fraction is determined primarily by the denominator tells us how much value each piece has, we must add and subtract fractions with the same denominator. This means occasionally we'll have to change the fractions, one or more of the fractions, if the denominators are not the same. Right here, we want to try for the least common denominator if possible. It's not required, but if we get the least common denominator, we have a little bit less work in the end in simplifying our answer. We always want to simplify our answer. Our first example, 3/8 plus 1/8. Here when I look at the denominator, the value of each piece is 1/8. No adjustment necessary in our denominators. We can just add the 3/8 plus the 1/8 to give us 4/8. 4/8 can of course be simplified to 1/2. 4 is a 1 times 4. And an 8 is made up of a 2 times 4. So we can take or leave the times 4 in both the numerator and the denominator, and we'd prefer to leave it as 1/2 for the simplified version. If we are asked to subtract 5/8 minus 1/4, here I'm asking to subtract in a different value, eighths and fourths. Since we have to add and subtract in the same value, at least one of these fractions is going to need to be changed. Can I make an 4 into an 8 by multiplication? Yes, I can. So we are going to change this into 5/8 minus 2/8. 1 times 2 and 4 times 2 arrives at 2/8. Now we have the same value here. We have the same denominator. 5/8 minus 2/8 gives us 3/8. 3/8 is a simplified form of a fraction. No further work is necessary. 1/3 plus 2/4. We do not have a common denominator, which means we will have to change one or both of our denominators. As we take a look here, 3 times, I don't think we're going to be able to make a 4. But we can turn a 3 and a 4 into a 12. If we take a look, we can arrive at 4/12 here. 3 times 4 equals 12. So we also multiply 1 times 4 to get a 4. 4 times 3 is 12. So we would also multiply 2 times 3 to get a 6. Now that our denominators are in the same value, 4/12 plus 6/12 is 10/12. This, of course, can be simplified to 5/6. A 10 is really a 2 times 5. And a 12 is really a 2 times 6. And we can take or leave the 2 times. I prefer to leave it for the simplified form, and we end up with 5/6. Sometimes we have to do some regrouping, just like we did in our warm-up, where we had to regroup a few place values. If we want to regroup from part of a whole, if we don't have enough of the numerator to subtract, for example, 4 and 3/8 minus 2 and 1/2. We want to go for the common denominator here. 4 and 3/8 minus 2 and 4/8. 1 times 4 gives us the 4. 2 times 4 gives us the 8th. When we get ready to subtract this, I cannot take 4/8 if I only have 3/8 without going into the negatives. We're not going to go into the negatives. Instead, we're going to regroup. We can regroup from the next place, the whole numbers. When we regroup, the 4 becomes a 3 because we've regrouped one of the wholes, and the 3 turns into an 11. If we're regrouping one whole, we actually add 8 parts. It's a little bit easier with the decimals because we just have to add 10 all the time, but here we're actually going to add 8 to the 3 since we are regrouping eighths. Now we can subtract 11/8 minus 4/8 to give us 7/8, 3 minus 2 to give us 1. No simplifying required. I'd like for you to try this example on your own before following through to look at the answer. Working towards our common denominator. The least common denominator is 15. You may have chosen a different denominator. That's okay. We just have to make sure we simplify in the end. Adding our numerators together and our whole numbers together, 9 plus 10 gives us 19/15. 4 plus 5 gives us 9 wholes. If we take a look at our fraction here, this is very unpleasant to look at. A whole number mixed with an improper fraction, improper simple fraction. The 19 over 15 is more than a whole. We can regroup 15 of those 19 into one whole with 4 left over, or 10 and 4/15. That's it.